where we dive into authentic conversations about ourselves and our community, exploring topics that uplift and inspire us, from personal growth to social change. So grab your teacup and get ready to join the conversation. A lot of explosive testimony from the security officer at the Intercontinental Hotel in California, where Diddy was caught on video assaulting Cassie Ventura Fine. Okay. So we also got into some explosive content from explosive testimony, from a paid escort from Diddy. Lots of salacious, scandalous things were going on, y'all. I mean, it was just so crazy. So crazy. So we're going to jump right in with Law and Crime Network. Thank you. We're going to use this under Fair Use Act. Okay. Let me go ahead and get my screen ready. Hey guys, while Law and Order, Law and Crime, are paying bills. How are you guys on this Tuesday afternoon? Morning still. We're coming some afternoon in New York. We're coming in hot on the second day of the explosive trial and testimony of Diddy. Okay, so let me back this up a little bit to the content. There was a lot of great explosive content yesterday. Testimony. I keep saying content. Testimony yesterday that went on at the Diddy start of the trial. First day came out hard hitting. Okay. I read a lot of the testimony that was given. I'm going to be doing that today as well. So let's get right on in to day 2 of the Diddy trial. It's explosive.
We all know that the videotape of her purportedly being beaten by Sean Combs in 2016 changed the course of this entire legal saga. It came up a lot yesterday. She came up a lot yesterday, and now her testifying for the prosecution. I think a fair argument is this case either rises or falls with her testimony. So what has she testified to so far? Well, first of all, she's quite pregnant. She's about 8.5 months. 9 months pregnant. She's 38 years old. She explained that she was with Sean Combs for 10 years. We're talking about a 17-year age difference. She admitted that during the course of their relationship, he introduced her to certain sex acts. She asked to describe the relationship she had with him. Quote, there were violent arguments that would usually result in some sort of physical abuse, dragging, different things of that nature. Again, why is this important? He's charged with sex trafficking by force, fraud, or coercion. He's charged with racketeering conspiracy, a criminal enterprise, underlying crimes like sex trafficking, kidnapping, arson, bribery, obstruction, and also transporting sex workers for purposes of prostitution. She went on to say that he would stomp her in the head if she was down. There was frequent violence. She would have black eyes. She would have bruises. She was asked by the prosecution to describe what a freak-off was. And she said, quote, it basically entails the hiring of an escort and setting up this experience so that I could perform for Sean. It involved Combs being able to watch with me, the other person, and actually direct us on what we were doing. Eventually, it became a job for me, pretty much. And by the way, this comes after the testimony of a male performer who says he was hired by Cassandra Ventura and Sean Combs to have sex with Cassie in front of Sean Combs. She described how their relationship was quite complex. Talking about these freak-offs when she was first introduced to them, she says, I was confused, nervous, but also loved him very much. She explained how Sean Combs ultimately controlled a lot of her life. She talked about blackmail materials, so videos that Combs purportedly shot of her during these sexual encounters. She was concerned that they would be published, they would be released. Quote, he had many resources to do that. She was shown the 2016 video of that hallway attack, as I mentioned.
Welcome,
she confirmed
Sippers.
It was after a freak-off, which is important.
Explosive.
Because while the defense would say this is an
Cassie
unfortunate incident of domestic violence, and domestic violence is not sex trafficking, she has confirmed that this was after a freak-off. This was in furtherance of sex trafficking. She says she was afraid that if she said no to him, it would make him angry. So again, we're going to get more of her testimony in real time. So far, Rich, from what I've said, what are you taking away from her testimony?
Well, obviously, this is a horrendous relationship, and she suffered a lot. I think the defense is arguing, in essence, that she was a consensual, willing participant in this relationship. It was a 10-year relationship. It had ups and downs, and the defense is arguing that some of the things she argues now she was forced to do, she did willingly and perhaps even enjoyed at the time. So that's what we're getting at. But this is really shocking stuff for a jury to have to hear all of this, and I think see some of it is coming up.
Don't you think that there is a potential problem for the prosecution? Because we heard it, it was funny. We have a question from TDB. Jesse, does the male dancer's testimony about Cassie contradict the prosecution's opening statement? Now, he had testified that he thought he heard Sean Combs slapping her, that there were instances where he saw him dragging her, but at the same time, he was getting paid by her. He was texting her. She was participating in these freak-offs. You wonder, this case is a thin line. Was it coercion or not? Was she a victim or partner in this? Do you think when you hear the testimony of that male dancer and you hear her testimony now, it'll be difficult for the jury to believe that everything was coerced and against her will?
I don't think the jury is going to believe that everything was coerced and against her will at the time, but it doesn't have to. There's a massive power imbalance here. So even if she willingly participated for parts of this relationship, he has all of the power and he's using it. And the one thing you mentioned, I wrote down, blackmail video. That stuff's really important to the case, right? This is carrot and stick territory, but he kept, allegedly, things like these videos to keep people in line. And the allegation here is if she sort of got a little bit antsy about how the relationship was going, he would threaten to release videos that would destroy any chance of her having a career.
The defense would say the only person that was in possession of the videos was Cassandra Ventura. That's a point that they made yesterday.
That's an evidentiary point. I don't know the answer to that.
Let me ask you this. We have a question from Lauren. Has this cute little emoji, smiley face with the heart. I have a question. Do you think now that the prosecution has played their ace with Cassie, that they have more damning evidence to come?
I would expect so, because when you're prosecuting a case like this, you want to start strong. And I think some of the idea of putting her on in day 2 of this trial is to start strong. They put on a little corroborating testimony first, right, from this dancer, escort, whatever you want to call him, and now they have her, security guard, and they get to show the video, that horrible video, and now she testifies. But it can't be the prosecution's plan to try this case that now they're just going to wind their way through some other inconsequential witnesses. I mean, they have 2 more victims, as I understand it.
Well, let's talk about this. The practical reality is, A, they need to get her on the stand before she gives birth, okay?
But that's true, too. That's true. Good point.
Yeah, because victim 3 is nowhere to be found, so they may have to make sure that victim 1 is still available. But also, I agree that they started very strong with corroborating evidence before they brought her on, because what happened? When she filed her lawsuit in November of 2023, made these wild allegations. I think people said, how do we know this is true or not? As soon as that video was released by CNN, the whole game changed, because people not only believed that particular incident in the complaint, they believed overall all the allegations that she made, and it seems the prosecution is doing just that. Now, it's interesting thinking about this. By the way, I'm going to give more updates about her testimony. So right now, Ventura said, I thought we were monogamous. The prosecutor asked, was it made public? No, I was his artist, also his family, his children, meaning their relationship wasn't public yet. Who was linked to him publicly? Kim Porter. Ms. Ventura responds, how did Sean treat you at this time? We had fun. So a lot of this is talking about the beginnings of their relationship, and she has to concede some points, right? She can't just say, it was a disaster at the very beginning. I hated him from the very beginning. I was under a distress from the very beginning. There has to be an aspect to it where she explains, no, I started this relationship. I was young, I was excited, but then it devolved, right? In order to be credible on the stand about the story, I think.
I agree with that, and also to acknowledge that there were benefits to her of being in this relationship. It would, at least in theory, help her career. It would get her to meet people that she otherwise wouldn't have been able to meet. So all of that is true. There's nothing wrong with her conceding that, because none of that justifies being dragged down a hallway and beaten.
Exactly. And by the way, we jumped on here on air immediately as soon as we found out that Cassandra Ventura was officially taking the stand. And one thing that makes Law and Crime a little bit different than other outlets like that is our viewers. Not only do we value our viewers, but we are making content right now purely for our viewers on YouTube. We want to give you the most up-to-date information about this case in real time. And again, we are the only channel, the only news organization that is producing content for you specifically. We value that. YouTube is where the most hard cutting-edge news is coming from, and we want to get it out to you as quickly as possible. So thank you so much to our supporters. We are going to continue to take your questions for a while now, because she's going to be on the stand. So let's keep it going. Again, thank you to our YouTube audience. Jane, are there any more witnesses to Cassie getting attacked by Diddy apart from the bodyguard? I mean, I don't know. I would imagine so.
Yeah, I don't know either. There's a videotape, so that's kind of a witness. But yes, I would imagine there are other witnesses who are going to talk about the relationship and probably talk about some of the physical stuff.
Well, they mentioned chiefs of staff. They mentioned a chef. They mentioned, one of the questions from the defense yesterday was, how is this a conspiracy, right? For a conspiracy, you need two or more people to agree.
Yeah.
Who are the people that coordinated and facilitated this racketeering and sex trafficking operation are not criminally charged?
So I see two major hurdles for the prosecution in this case. One is what we've been talking about. They have to get past the idea that this is consensual behavior by other people who are behaving in a questionable fashion. They have to get past that. The second bigger hurdle to me is turning an abuse case into a racketeering case, right? Because yes, they have to prove RICO is very challenging. You have to prove a RICO enterprise. You have to prove a pattern of racketeering activity. You have to prove multiple predicate acts that are violations of separate federal laws. It is hard to sustain a RICO case. We've seen some other cases where people have tried. That's going to be a major hurdle here. The fact that he had this 10-year relationship, and even if it's arguably true, he took advantage of her, he treated her horribly, he beat her, he did all these terrible things to her, that's not racketeering.
I say that the prosecution spent so much time yesterday in their opening statement trying to explain to this jury why it's a crime. Because it's not a garden variety trafficking or racketeering case. And I think the more they have to explain it, that's a problem for them. I think it's a weakness in their case, personally. Now we have an update from court. Prosecutor asked Cassandra Ventura, what was his lifestyle like? Ventura responds, he had all these assistants. He could get things done. He traveled quite a bit. And then apparently she's shown a photo, and she says, this is Sean and I at a strip club in New York, like 2007, 2008, Halloween. How did Sean Combs' moods vary? Day to day. Now look, he is charged with specific crimes that John Smith on the street can't meet. There is an argument here very powerful, had all these businesses, different resources, different employees, he would be in the position to be able to carry out a sex trafficking or racketeering operation. That's what makes him unique, though.
Sure, but is that what he's doing? Is he running an entertainment and fashion industry, or is he running essentially a criminal organization?
By the way, we have a poll up right now. You can participate in it. Do you think Cassie Ventura was a victim or partner in this? Ready for this? 82%. Well, this doesn't make sense. 82% say yes. I don't know if that's yes to, I think we need clarification. 82% say victim or partner. We'll get a clarification on that.
By the way, that's my answer to that question.
Oh, okay. 82% say victim. 82% say victim. Maybe based on we're reporting on the testimony right now.
Yeah. I mean, I think she is a victim if the allegations are true, but also she is involved in some of the criminal act. I mean, she's getting those prostitutes, right? She's making payments to them, allegedly. She's having them come. So she's involved in some of the alleged criminal activity. And that's an interesting point that wouldn't just apply to her. Other people in his orbit might be some combination of victim and co-conspirator.
But you know what? That video changes everything, because the argument would be, what do you think happens if she says no?
Yeah.
What do you think happens if she says, I'm not in the mood for a freak off tonight. I'm not going to pay the dancer. That's what's going to happen. That video is arguably the most important piece of evidence because it sets the stage when we're talking about coercion or force. Question from Angelina. How old was Cassie when they first started dating? I think she was 19 years old, so you're talking about a 17-year age difference. That's important. I think that's an important factor if you're talking about power and control, right?
Yeah, absolutely. The fact that he's older and obviously has much more power anyway.
Sherry Williams asks, what kind of time is Diddy facing if he's found guilty? Do you want me to? I have it listed unless you want me to answer that one.
I would say life in prison, but you can tell me specifically.
So this is exactly what he would be facing. So if he's convicted of one count of racketeering conspiracy, I pulled this up because I figured people might be curious. If he is convicted of racketeering conspiracy, the top charge, that is a maximum sentence of life in prison. You know what the minimum is for that? Well, okay, so that's life in prison. Maximum sentence for sex trafficking, life in prison. You know what the minimum is for sex trafficking? 15 years in prison. And then the transportation for purposes of prostitution carries a maximum sentence of 10 years in prison. Rich, I have to tell you, I don't know about racketeering. I don't know about sex trafficking if he's going to be convicted of those. I am fairly confident he's going to be convicted of allegedly transporting sex workers with the intent that they engage in prostitution. Their argument, as far as I understood yesterday, their defense yesterday was he hired people for their time and experience.
Let me tell you something. If he gets out of this trial only convicted of transporting for prostitution, that is a defense victory. They would take that in a heartbeat, I bet.
Because I think if he is convicted of that, he might not get 10 years. He might get, a shorter amount and time served, his time already in the MDC. I don't know, but it wouldn't be life in prison. Wouldn't be 15 years.
Yeah, he might not get full 10 years. He might not get the hardest prison term, the hardest prison life, right? He would get out. He would still have a life. He would still have his enterprise. So I think that would actually be a
Sippers, let's take a little moment to sip some of that tea. So, say Diddy is only convicted under the transportation of prostitution, right? Say because of all of the already testimony that's currently been done and, seemingly going to occur over the next 8 weeks, right? Of how exactly that trafficking of prostitution occurred under what guise, that can also put a idea in one's head on that juror panel, right? Of how he did it. Did he use drugs? Was it physical violence? Things like that. That could potentially get Diddy 10 years under a, trafficking, prostitution, sex for prostitution, transportation across state lines situation. Like considering all elements of what the jurors will hear over the next 8 months, depending on what he's convicted of, if not all, or one or two, however, have you. Also, what they will, also the judge, ultimately the judge will decide Diddy's sentence if he's ultimately convicted, right? Take into account what the judge is going to see and hear from each testifying person. That can also have an impact on the judge's sentencing, even if it is something as small as, or least, as the transportation for prostitution situation. Being the testimony that's being testified can have an impact on how the judge ultimately ends up sentencing Diddy. You guys let me know in the chat. I'm going to continue to have this running. I'm also going to be sipping my tea from time to time, moment to moment. Ew, I dropped my chicken salad fork on my computer. Anywho. And you guys continue also to chime in. When you come in, please show the tea sippers some love. Fill our cups back up with a like and a subscribe. All right.
Defense victory, all things considered.
So we have an update from court. I think she's describing what the alleged abuse was like. She talks about anger, zoning out. She was asked, how did this impact you? She says, greatly. The next thing I knew, I was getting hit in the face. She also apparently talks about psychological abuse. He'd tell me to watch my mouth, change my face. So, I do wonder, that has a strong impact, because there's another case that we're covering right now. It's the Alexander brothers. And they're being charged with sex trafficking. And the argument you hear from defense attorneys is this is a very novel way to charge individuals. That if you're talking about romantic relationships or girlfriends or flings, and you're taking them on trips, you're paying for their meals, you're buying them gifts, maybe you're promising things, romantic gestures. Are we now in a position where romantic relationships are just on the line of sex trafficking, or where does it differ?
Well, here he is allegedly bringing in prostitutes to participate in these freak-offs and paying them for sexual services. So that to me would clearly be sex trafficking if it's true. It's not just about the girlfriend. It's not just about the relationship. It's about these sex workers that he is moving about.
We have a question from To Trune. What about male victims? It seems like this case is solely based on women victims.
This case appears to be based on women victims. I mean, I've heard speculation too about male victims. I don't know where that stands.
Well, there's lawsuits, a lot of lawsuits that have been filed by male victims, and I wonder, do you think that was intentional for the prosecution to not include those in this case? I mean, why weren't minor victims? Let me say this. He has been accused in lawsuits of abusing minors, okay? Allegations, accusations, okay, never been criminally charged. If you're the prosecution and you want a slam dunk case against Sean Combs and you want justice for all of the alleged federal crimes he committed, the problem with the minor victim for a defendant like that is there's no consent defense anymore. Do you think it's like we want to be as specific as possible with these charges? We don't want to make this case overly broad. The bigger it becomes, the more risk it'll fall down. Thoughts?
I don't buy that. I think the prosecution wanted as many victims as it could get. But I think the prosecution had to scrutinize every potential victim to, first of all, are they going to show up, right? We have an issue with one of the three, whether or not they're going to show up. So they had to scrutinize that. And also, how are their claims? How are they going to be on cross-examination? How is it going to play? They wanted multiple victims. The only way this case is what it is because there are multiple victims. This is not a RICO case if it's just what he did to one person, no matter how horrible it was. That doesn't get you to racketeering. So they need the multiple victims.
And that brings up a good question I have. If you read the indictment, let me rephrase that. There's been many superseding indictments.
Yeah.
It says alleged victims, right? Alleged victim 1, 2, 3, 4. But then it says victims including, like victims, many victims, including alleged victim 1, 2, 3, 4. Does that mean we're going to hear other people who are not enumerated as one of the alleged victims, but are just other victims in the case? Because I don't.
It could be. They could bring people who are other victims in the case, especially the way the case is pled, the way the case is being tried. Now, they would have had to tell the defense by now who those potential witnesses are, and I assume, well, I don't know if we would have heard about it in this particular. Usually you would have heard about it. You would see it on the docket, but I don't know.
So talking about this alleged criminal enterprise and how, based on the opening statement from yesterday, he didn't just have staff who were helping him commit the crimes, but also covering them up. Just now, an update from court. Prosecutor asked Cassie Ventura, how would he keep tabs on you? To which she apparently responds, he didn't live far apart. Oh, we didn't live far apart. He'd send security to come find me or a trusted assistant. Like who? David James, Christina Coram, who we all know has been a central figure in this case. Maybe not the criminal case, but she's come up in lawsuits before. The prosecutor asks her, was your relationship exclusive? Ventura replies, no. If she's naming names like David James or Christina Coram, do they have to testify, you think?
I don't think they have to testify, but I wouldn't be surprised if they did. I would think this is all planned out, that she's going to indicate some people, and then the prosecution is going to bring them in later in the trial to verify, right? One thing you really want to do with a witness like this, the defense is going to say that she's embellishing. They might say she's lying, but that's going to be a little hard to do with that video, right? They can't just say she's a liar, but they're going to say she's exaggerating, she's embellishing, they're painting it a certain way because of the case. So you have to bring in these corroborating witnesses and whatever other corroborating evidence you have to verify what it is she's saying. So it would be very useful, for example, if she says, yes, David James came around to check on me on behalf of Mr. Combs, and then David James takes the stand and says, yes, I did that.
Yeah.
That would be helpful.
Well, and yesterday they talked about the defense, her lawsuit in 2023, her attorney being in the courtroom, that she has an incentive, a monetary incentive to fabricate this situation. We've got a question from Daniela. By the way, we're taking your questions on YouTube about this case, about Cassandra Ventura's testimony that's happening in real time. We're trying to update you as quickly as possible about what she says in that courtroom. No cameras in the courtroom, no audio in the courtroom. So this is the best we can do to bring you her testimony in real time. Question from Daniela, 3984, talking about the video. What version of the hotel video was played in the courtroom? Was it the sped up version? Now, I believe it was portions of the surveillance video, not the CNN video, and cell phone video that was taken by the security guard who testified, Israel Flores. He had apparently taken a cell phone video of the surveillance footage to show his wife, but that became a big pretrial issue about what the jury was going to see.
Yeah. And by the way, that story was a little odd. I took a video of it to show my wife. For what purpose? I mean, that was a little strange.
Well, you're not going to believe this happened, even though he didn't report it to the police.
I think it's going to be difficult. I think the defense would like you to believe that video's been doctored somehow, but I think they're going to have trouble sustaining that.
Hey, would you like a civil law question?
Yes, please.
Yes, this is our litigator here. Question from Teodora Bodorova. Can Cassie sue Diddy again if Diddy's found guilty as charged?
So, Cassie, if you remember, sued Diddy. And that was the first thing we really heard about this. That was before the video. There was this blockbuster lawsuit in November of 2023 that really put these allegations out there. And she was very detailed. In fact, the front page of her lawsuit had a trigger warning on it. It was so detailed. That case was settled the next day. And I would have to think that the settlement included an agreement that she wouldn't sue him again for anything. Usually, if you're going to settle like that and pay the kind of money she would have gotten paid for settling that lawsuit, you get what is known as a general release. And a general release means you don't sue me for anything that happened. Now, here's one caveat. Up to the date of this agreement. Up to the date of this agreement. So then if you, the next day, punch me in the face, I have a new lawsuit against you.
Yeah.
Right? But at least up to the agreement, she can't go back now and say, I want more money.
Well, for the same conduct, right? I mean, if he comes out and he did something to her, or allegedly did something to her after the agreement was signed.
Yeah. Presumably they got it. And it also, like, you have to make sure the release covers all of his companies, all of these other individuals who were involved. It has to be a general release of everybody. You don't want to leave any wiggle room to have a lawsuit.
We have a follow-up question to this from Fads. So why did he settle if he was innocent?
Well, I mean, people settle all the time when they think they're not liable. People, like, with the thing that really surprised me when that case was filed is that the case was filed. Typically in a case like that, you draft the complaint and you send it to the defendant and you say, dear sir, please pay me a boatload of money or I'm going to file this publicly in court. And if there's any merit to it, or if just for publicity reasons, the defendant decides to negotiate and pay, and it never goes to court. So it fascinated me at the time that she actually filed that publicly and he settled it the next day. That unfortunately was pretty telling, that he didn't put up any fight on the lawsuit. He didn't even want to litigate it. He didn't even want to go to discovery. He wanted to settle it immediately.
And if he would have settled it before she filed it, I think we would have been in a very different position than we are today.
Oh, I totally agree, because that lawsuit, I think, is what sets this ship sailing.
So let's talk some tea from that talking point. Sippers. When you file a lawsuit, right, the person responding to it, they have a matter of moments, window, however have you, to, look it over, respond to it, talk to you potentially about it, however have you. Diddy did not do anything like that. He essentially bluffed with Cassie, right? He told Cassie, like, yeah, whatever, okay, you got a lawsuit, file it. Ha ha ha. And he walked away. Cassie filed the lawsuit. Say Diddy would have talked to Cassie about what was in the lawsuit, things like that, and move forward with her like that, litigating, mediating the lawsuit, he probably wouldn't be sitting in federal court right now fighting a RICO charge. Okay. Say, and he would have did it behind the scenes, however have you, maybe settled with her, whatever. We never would have known about the tape. We never would have known, about other elements of this case that we know now. So essentially, Diddy is the one that dropped the ball. But as we've been made to understand, Diddy has been on hard drugs for the past 30 years. So with that, Diddy's mind probably is not as sharp as far as business savvy as we may think he is, because he was the proprietor of Diageo and Ciroc and things like that. The clothing line, Bad Boy clothing. Okay. So Sean John, those were early moments, when he maybe had a brain cell to use. Currently, I don't think Diddy's working with a full deck, because over time, drugs wear away at your brain. So drugs and alcohol do. So Diddy, he bluffed her and she called it, and now he's in federal court.
I agree. Okay, update from court. Prosecutor asks Cassandra Ventura, did you see other men? Cassandra Ventura responds, yes. Prosecutor asks, did Sean see other women? Ventura responds, yes. He said, I am Puff Daddy. I was insanely jealous. Did you move to LA with him? Yes. He wanted to be close to his kids who were there. Goes to a theme from yesterday, where the defense owned up and said, yeah, he's jealous, he's angry, he's violent. He engaged in domestic violence. That 2016 video is indefensible. When you hear her testify like that, does it help the defense? Does it help the prosecution? Because the defense got in front of it. They didn't say he's a saint.
Well, the prosecution, but the defense did the correct thing in opening statement, and they had to do it. They didn't have any choice. I mean, the defense could walk into this trial and say he's the victim of a conspiracy to invent evidence against him. That was never going to work. The thing's on video, and there's lots of other evidence. So they were going to have to say He is not a delightful guy. You people on the jury probably aren't going to like things that he did. He did engage in things we consider domestic violence, but this is a racketeering case. And I liked that about the opening statement. They made that very clear. You're going to have to judge the crimes alleged here, not whether you like or dislike him.
And look, I think the defense spent a large portion yesterday dismantling all mentioned under racketeering. It's not kidnapping. Is the person he allegedly kidnapped to work from 10 years. He's not involved in the arson, forced labor. He was charged, employees were tracking. So they're saying the prosecution can't meet the elements of the crimes that are charged against Sean Combs. Okay, from content, will the transcripts be in fact, we are using them in a lot of the content that we're creating for you. I did it in a sidebar earlier today that's coming out. Sierra Gillespie, who has the Scandal channel, has been using them as well. And by the way, if you go on our Law and Crime YouTube, we're also experimenting a little bit with this AI. You know, we're creating recreations of the courtroom, you know, what it's going to look like. Since there's no cameras, we're using the transcripts verbatim to tell the story, to kind of recreate what the trial may be looking like. We're experimenting a little bit there, so come check out Law and Crime's YouTube channel on that. Question from JW, not me. JW, who's Kim Porter? So Kim Porter was, right? I have done a lot of sidebars when it came to Kim Porter, because this is the mother of several of his children. She died from pneumonia several years back. Came up yesterday in testimony, came up yesterday in opening statements, because the defense's theory is that these women were jealous of him, right? They're coming after him for jealous. So Cassandra Ventura, when she found out, my one true love is Kim Porter, she became angry, jealous, saw that the relationship wasn't going anywhere. But I've done a lot of sidebars on Kim Porter, because there are those on the online community and some of the public who believe that her death was not just a tragic result of natural consequences, but Sean Combs may have had some. I think those theories have been debunked, but she is coming up in this trial.
Yeah, I'm sure she is. And listen, how old was she when she died?
That's a good question. I'll tell you right now. Kim Porter,
40-something?
47.
Okay. 47-year-old with a lot of financial means dies of pneumonia. I understand why there are people online questioning that.
Yeah.
I understand. I don't know if there's anything to it, but I understand why it would raise an eyebrow.
There's a lot of weird stuff, but
Yeah.
based on the medical examiner, based on what we've seen, the circumstances, and I've done episodes of Sidebar on this. To me, I think was anything more there. I'm sure people will disagree. But just by the way, talking about it, we are planning to dedicate so many shows and content to the Diddy trial. So definitely keep checking out Law and Crime's YouTube channel. We will constantly put out videos. By the way, a little bit later on, we're going to bring on Elizabeth Milner, who's right now in the courthouse watching Cassandra Ventura testify. She's going to come on here, tell us what she saw. So stay with us here on this live program. We have a question from Ariana San 1. Is it favorable to start her testimony so early in the case? How could this influence the foundation of the remaining counts that he's charged with?
I think it's a perfectly good strategy. And by the way, I took your point earlier, right? She's pregnant, so you have to deal with that. You can't get into a situation where she's not available. Also, I wonder if with these victims' witnesses, the prosecution's thinking is, we want to get this testimony on the record as soon as possible. We don't want to risk anything happening with these key witnesses of ours. We want to get them in the courtroom and get it done and get it in front of the jury as soon as we can. Now, in terms of the flow of a trial, you want to start strong, you want to end strong, you want to ebb and flow, you want to worry about how you end at the end of a Friday going into a weekend. You want to sort of pay attention to the pace of the trial and the story you're telling. But you also have to deal with availability of witnesses. Not every witness is available every day. And you have to deal with that and put this complicated puzzle together of what witnesses are you calling in what order. But I do think they really wanted to start this trial with something really significant, and this made sense.
Got a question from Helena Ignacia Gallego. Is Cassie allowed to testify on racketeering evidence that she witnessed, or only her personal experience with Diddy?
Well, she's allowed to testify if she witnessed racketeering evidence and has personal knowledge of it and is qualified to testify about it, she can testify.
I think she already has,
Yeah,
talking about the
like
assistants and the people who might have helped him. But how do they prove an agreement, right? It's not just, it's racketeering conspiracy, an agreement to further criminal activity, to further racketeering activity. What's the agreement? How do they prove that?
Yeah, that's a very good question, because the agreement isn't we're going to abuse a lot of women. Let's go use this enterprise and go do that. No one has an agreement like that. So that's part of the problem of a racketeering count at all. It's so technical in the requirements of proof, it's really hard to sustain.
Got an update from court. Cassie Ventura's testimony happening in real time. Prosecutor asks, where did you live in LA? Ventura responds, 875 Comstock Avenue, or Comstock Avenue. This is Wilshire Corridor condos. How tall was the building? No more than 17 floors. Where did Sean live? 200 South Mapleton. Sean would use a golf cart to get back and forth. I know where this is going. This is going to the allegation that she was present, and I might be wrong, that she was present when Sean Combs dangled a woman off the balcony. You remember that allegation? I think that's where that's going.
Yeah,
yeah,
I do. And that's an important kind of allegation in this case, because again, the threats, the reason all of these people say they lived in fear, and it helps justify their conduct, even if their conduct otherwise looks like they were in agreement.
Question from, where is this? I thought we had a question. Yeah, we got a question up here. And I got another civil law question for you.
Excellent.
Danny, question, what happens to all the Diddy civil suits if he's found not guilty?
Well, it has no effect on the continuance of the civil suits. And in some way, it's actually helpful to the civil suits, because the burden of proof, as we've said here many times, is different in a civil suit. You only have to prove more likely than not instead of beyond a reasonable doubt. So the jury could come back and find him acquitted on all counts because they didn't find proof beyond a reasonable doubt. That doesn't shield him from any civil litigation whatsoever. It might embolden him to fight, but you know, the good news for those civil litigants is now he's out of prison. He's continuing to make money, presumably, and be a defendant that you could sue and collect from. That might be useful.
Yeah, and look, OJ, right?
Right.
OJ.
Well, that's the blueprint. That is exactly the blueprint. That is a criminal trial where they mucked up the prosecution and couldn't get a conviction, and then the family came in and got a civil judgment against him.
We have a question from, I'm not going to say the name because I don't think it's appropriate, but you know, it's fine. I'm just going to spell it out for you. ASSY Mama, okay? Will, this is a family show. Will Diddy testify?
Absolutely no way.
Really? You don't think so?
No way.
I don't think he is either.
No way. I mean, in a million years, you're going to put him on the stand and let them show him that video and take him through it and cross-examine him. The odds of him doing that are very small.
He shouldn't. It's very different than when he testified years ago in the nightclub shooting case. The circumstances incredibly different than they are here. And I think he probably has a lot more to lose here. By the way, but you think about his judgment. No, I don't know what told him it was a good idea to make an Instagram video admitting that it was him in the 2016 hotel video. You wonder about the admissions he made there. You wonder about what admissions he'd make on the stand.
So a defendant like Diddy is fighting two battles. He has this battle inside the courtroom where he doesn't want to be convicted of crimes, but he's still a public figure. He's still got to run his business. He's fighting a public relations battle. And I think at that moment, he thought, I have to say something about this publicly for the point of my business. And sometimes those two things conflict. What you would do for your business is not necessarily what you would do as a defendant.
We got a question. No, we have an update from court. A few things, actually. So first, we have a poll that I think is very interesting. Has this trial changed your view of Sean Diddy Combs? 54% say yes, 46% say no. Interesting what people came into this trial thinking, in the sense maybe their opinion was changed over the last.
So we're going to sip some tea on that. Has our public perception been changed about Diddy? I'm going to give my personal tease on Diddy. I've never really particularly cared for Diddy. Diddy's not the most entertaining of the hip hop musicians that I favor. He's not the Nellies. He's not the the Ushers. He's not the Lil Waynes. He's not the Tupac. He's not the Biggie Smalls. So I never really fancy Diddy. His, rapping is just like how I'm talking right now. It's very, tone monotone, and it's not anything that's alluring or exciting or, it just didn't do it for me. That's my personal tease on Diddy. Y'all drop y'all's personal perception of Diddy and let us know how you feel, sippers. Do you care for Diddy still? Did you ever care for Diddy before? And how do you think you'll like Diddy after he may or may not be convicted of these charges? Remember to like and subscribe to Tanisha Talks Teas. We are catching up on day 2. Cassie Ventura is currently on the stand, and we're getting all of the moments and minutes with Law and Crime. Thank you guys for being here on day 2 of Diddy's trial. It's underway and explosive.
Last year and a half about Sean Combs, so it's hard to know. Update from court. Prosecutor asks Cassie Ventura, who paid your rent in LA? Ventura responds, Sean, except when I had the house in Studio City. Prosecutor says, why'd you pay then? Ventura responds, I could afford it then, and I wanted to have some control. It was accepted. By whom? Sean. I think this is critical because this goes to the idea of the commercial sex acts, right? Don't you have to say there was something of value that was given or obtained in exchange for sex, in exchange for the relationship, or goes to sex in exchange for the relationship, or goes to control he might have had over her? I think money is important.
Yeah, I think money is important too. And the notion that that was one of the ways he controlled her and other people is an important part of the trial.
This is a question from Josh Cutemup. How is it not a bigger deal that one of the witnesses is missing? Again, presuming alleged victim number 3.
I think it's a pretty big deal.
Yep.
The question is, at the end of this trial, has that person testified? And if the answer is no now, the jury doesn't ever have to know anything about it. I mean, the jury doesn't have to know that there was a planned third witness and they didn't show up, and therefore the jury doesn't have to make any conclusions about that one way or another. You could make all sorts of different conclusions from that fact.
We got a few updates from court about the testimony of Cassandra Ventura. Prosecutor asks, how many songs did you write while with Sean Combs? Ventura says hundreds, that most were never released. Some got leaked on the internet, some on mixtapes. How many?
Also, tea sippers. How does that look to the trafficking? Like, if Diddy's buying these women homes to live in, then how is he trafficking you if you have the capability to come to and from? You're only trafficked, like, okay, sex trafficking places you think of are like hotels, but you're usually heavily guarded. If you're in a situation like that, you're usually in an underground situation, off the radar. In low-level sex trafficking cases, you may be in like a trap house of some sort, a dope house, an abandoned house or something of the sort. But if you have the capability to come and go, are you being human trafficked? Drop your tea in the chat and let me know what you think on that.
How many albums on your deal were not released? 9. Did you get paid for them? No. Then talking about the freak-offs. The freak-offs became a job. There was no time to do anything else but do them, then try to recover from them. How much time would
And that's what I
Freakoffs?
was saying as well. When the Diddy stuff first really started unraveling, like last August, September, right? How were they ever even making any music or conducting any type of business when all they did is seem like was have freak offs 3-4 days at a time, and then you're spending 3-4 days. That's your entire week. You're spending the rest of the week trying to recuperate with juice IVs or whatever IVs they were using. This is crazy.
Take the longest was 4 days, significant periods of time. And by the way, this echoes what was said in the very first indictment against Sean Combs when, in Freakoffs, and when she said in her civil complaint, these prolonged sexual episodes. These are different than other kind of sex acts, and that's important, I think, for this kind of case.
And then I'd also like to sip this tea on the matter of his children were in the courtroom yesterday when they spoke of all of the sexual natures that occurred and things like that. I'm believing they maybe they're on day 2 as well. Listening, how do you guys feel about that? Like, would you want to be a child of anyone's parenting, and you're listening to however they carry on sexually in any manner? Like, no kid cares to hear that. Okay, what do you guys think they're going to do when they start introducing the videos into the testimonies to the kids? I know they shouldn't be. Do you think the kids will be in attendance in the courtroom while the actual videos are playing?
Oh yeah, very important. The duration of those, the fact that drugs were so involved in them, the number of people involved, where they got the people from, all of that is very important. 9 albums, that's a lot of albums. That's an interesting fact, right? She's in this relationship. She's not just being abused. She's trying to start an entertainment career, and sounds pretty bad.
Question from Madison Thomas, a question long crime. Did Cass Diddy injure her? That was, if you're just joining us now, first of all, we are reporting in real time her testimony on the stand. There are no cameras, there's no equipment, so we're trying our best to relay to you in real time what she's testifying to. But she started off her testifying by saying there were violent arguments that would result in physical abuse. There'd be dragging. She talked about being stomped in the head if she was down. That physical abuse or alleged physical abuse is a key component of this case, particularly sex trafficking, fraud, force, or coercion that was used to induce somebody to have these sex acts. This is a question from Angelina. Is Diddy placed with other inmates? If no, why not? I think there is an element of isolation in a way, although he is around other people.
Yeah, I don't know the specifics of his incarceration. I would suspect everybody's trying to keep him safe.
Well, I know that he's in the same MDC as Mangione. It's
Right.
kind of become a
Right,
little
right,
bit of a circus what's going on there. Okay, so we're getting update that it looks like court went to lunch. So we're going to be getting Elizabeth Milner on as soon as possible, who was in that courtroom. Fascinated to know what she observed of Cassandra Ventura's testimony, and also how the jury might be responding to her testimony. Which, by the way, can you ever glean anything from how the jury is responding to testimony?
Yes, you try. I mean, sometimes when I'm on trial, I have a person in the courtroom with me whose sole job is to watch the jury, because I'm very interested in the reactions of jurors. But jurors try not to express emotion. They try to stay straight-faced. They're not there reacting the same way you and I would if we were watching some testimony on television. So it is very hard to do, but you can sometimes, and you certainly try to.
Question from Slaytan. To what extent might Cassie Ventura's visible pregnancy influence jurors' emotional response and perception of her credibility? Will that have an impact on the jurors without them knowing?
I think it could. I mean, again, that's something that could cut both ways. I mean, in one sense, a juror could say, well, it appears that she's moved on and she has a life and she has a family, and actually she seems to have come out of this okay. And that could be something that a jury could consider. It also, I think jurors have some sympathy for pregnancy, and it makes them like the witness a little better.
We have another question from Angelina. Who is Diddy's lawyer? He's got a lot of lawyers.
Right.
So he's got Xavier Donaldson. He's got Mark Agnifilo, Tenny Garagos. He's got Brian Steele. I mean, he's got a high-powered legal team. Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
Right. It's a necessary thing. He needs a high-powered legal team. It's funny, the defense has the daughter of Mark Garagos, and I think the prosecution has the daughter of James Comey.
Correct.
So it's a second-generation trial in some respect. But they're really good. They're really good lawyers all around, and for the defense. And I would expect. I mean, this is a defendant.
And remember when they talked about this attorney right here, how incompetent he was. He wasn't really focusing on, the things that needed to be focused on, like the Costco doesn't sell baby oil. No. Something about the baby oil at Costco, y'all. Something about the baby oil at Costco, but it was something so irrelevant to the serious nature of what Diddy is lined up here facing. So we're going to see how he fares, along the trial for Diddy, because here he is. I thought people were saying that he had got fired from the Diddy case, but he's here. I think they're saying this is his daughter. So we're going to see how he does, y'all.
Who can afford top-level representation, which most defendants down facing federal charges can't, is taking advantage of that.
We have another question from Content Channel. Couldn't she be charged with racketeering also, meaning Cassie, since she booked hotels and paid with her credit card, as stated by the previous witness, presumably referring to David Phillip, who is that male performer?
Yeah, I think some of these people are, as I said, a mix of victim and co-conspirator, and I also assume that the government is only interested or mostly interested in convicting Sean Combs. So probably they have an understanding that they're not going to bring any charges against her.
We have a question from OU812. Jesse, any idea how many witnesses the prosecution will be calling? I know it's an 8-week trial. I know the defense is going to be calling a lot of witnesses. I don't know how many the prosecution will call, but there is a strength in numbers. So aside from just the alleged victims, the more that they can get escorts, right? The more that they can get people who worked in Diddy's inner circle, that's going to be imperative in this case. And also, I imagine, members of law enforcement.
I think that's true. I think you want strength in numbers. I'm gonna put one caveat there.
Please do.
If I'm the prosecution, I want to be careful when you show the jury this evidence, this really shocking evidence over and over and over again. They become more conditioned to seeing it, and their reaction to it the first time is much different than the reaction to it the 40th time. So you want to put in enough evidence to get your conviction, but you don't necessarily want to repeat the same thing again and again and again. It's not really helpful.
Want to hear something interesting? We took another poll. We're taking a lot of polls here on YouTube. Do you think celebrity status will affect the outcome of proceedings? 59% say yes, 41% say no. Thoughts on that?
Well, his celebrity status affects the outcome of the proceedings. I mean, it affects the whole case, right? It's the only reason there is a case. It affects his ability to mount a defense and the quality of that defense. So I think that question more gets to what will the jury think when it considers that they're looking at a powerful celebrity here? Will that impact them one way or another? And once again, that can kind of go either way on a juror-by-juror basis. But I will tell you that jury charge is going to very much contain instruction that they're not supposed to take his celebrity into account in rendering a verdict.
It's interesting. We always have to ask that question after Johnny Depp, Amber Heard, because of his celebrity status and the way he testified was a big factor in that. We got a question from James K. Will individuals involved in these freak-offs be named? So I think this goes to a larger question, right? Everybody, when Sean Combs was first indicted? Who are the celebrities? Who's going to be named, right? It might not be, it might just be the alleged victims and the escorts. I mean, I think there's a difference between saying what the prosecution's asserting versus, oh my gosh, we're going to list every celebrity who knew what was going on and every celebrity that may or may not have participated. I don't think that could be a distraction, but I don't know. You tell me, I could be wrong.
Okay, so everybody's fascinated to hear what this list are. In somewhat in the same way, people always wanted to get the Epstein files and hear what that list is. People want to know who's involved. From the prosecution standpoint, it really wouldn't be that helpful to have a lot of celebrities who attended these freak-offs, because that would make it seem more and more like it's just a Hollywood thing. It's a thing that a lot of people participated in. You might not understand it, but this is what they do out there when they're rich and famous. I don't think that it helps that much. I know the public is very interested to know who else was involved.
We have a question from Makita Ramser. Do you think Sean Combs and R. Kelly's cases are similar? Now, let me just also say, he was convicted of something else. It was a racketeering case, but this was illegal sex with minors, sexual exploitation of minors. Sure, there was bribery, coercion, forced labor, and head of a giant music icon, people working for him, wealth, power, resources, but the minors component is what I think separates that case from Sean Combs.
I think the minors component makes it different. Obviously, it has some comparisons because it's the same industry and some of the allegations are similar, but there are also differences.
Yeah, and I can see that. And look, I think during the pre-trial motions leading up, they cited a lot of cases that were similar. So I remember they cited Ghislaine Maxwell. I believe they cited R. Kelly's case. I think they even cited the Mike Jeffries case, Abercrombie and Fitch. Oh, yeah. That was in order for him to get bail, which was ultimately abandoned after losing so many times. Okay, so I have an update for you. We're getting Elizabeth Milner, our in-court reporter. She's coming out as soon as possible, and then she's got to jump back into court because they're going to come back after this lunch break. I got a question from Sharada Ramanthan. Won't the Cassie video clinch it since she has confirmed that it was after?
Thanks for watching. Remember to show your support by liking, subscribing, and sharing. It's a blessing. Keep your teacups filled and ready for my next upload. Until then, stay inspired and remember, always stay dipping.